I always thought loyalty was a two-way street, especially in a family that prided itself on perfect traditions. But as the champagne flowed at my parents' 30th anniversary dinner, I realized I wasn't a guest of honor. I was the sacrificial lamb. They didn't just hand my future to my brother on a silver platter. They did it with a smile, assuming I'd never find the one number that would bring their entire world crashing down. The restaurant was one of those places where the menus don't have prices, and the waiters move like ghosts. My mother, draped in silk, was glowing. My father was busy shaking hands with business associates, playing the role of the successful patriarch. And then there was Leo, my brother. He sat there smirking, looking like the cat who'd already swallowed the canary. I, Lily Rose, had spent the last 5 years building my own career from nothing. I never asked for a handout, but I knew about the fund. It was a legacy left by my grandmother, specifically meant to keep the family business's controlling interest in the hands of the most capable heir. "A toast," my father announced, his glass catching the light of the chandelier, "to 30 years of partnership and to the future of the family legacy." I smiled, expecting a nod toward the expansion project I'd just spearheaded. Instead, my father's hand landed heavily on Leo's shoulder. "Tonight, as a gift to our son and a celebration of our union, we are officially transferring the Rose Trust entirety to Leo. It's time a man took the reins of the family's primary capital." The room went silent, but my ears were ringing. That trust wasn't just money. It was the voting power for the entire firm. They weren't just giving him cash. They were giving him my job, my department, and my future. "Dad," my voice was steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. The trust was contingent on performance metrics. Leo hasn't even stepped into the office in 6 months. My mother sighed, that practiced, disappointed sound she used whenever I made a scene. "Lily Rose, darling, don't be greedy. You have your little salary. Leo needs this to establish himself. It's an anniversary gift. Can't you just be happy for the family?" Leo leaned in, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "Better luck next lifetime, sis. I already signed the digital transfer. It's over." I looked at their faces. They weren't just choosing him, they were erasing me. They thought I was the emotional daughter who would cry, go home, and eventually show up for Christmas dinner. They forgot one thing. I was the one who managed the family's digital integration 3 years ago. I was the one who set up the security protocols. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply pulled out my phone. "You're right, Mom," I said, my thumb hovering over a specific app. "The family's future is important, but there's a number you all seem to have overlooked." I tapped a single digit, a 0, into the override command of the trust's smart contract ledger. "What are you doing?" Leo's smirk began to flicker. "I'm checking the audit trail," I replied coolly, because if you had looked at the balance sheet before signing that transfer, you would have seen that the trust isn't actually full of money anymore. It's full of debt. Debt that you just legally tied yourself to by signing that document. The color drained from my father's face. "Lily, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the number 42, Dad. The 42 shell companies you used the trust to bail out last year. I didn't stop the transfer. I let it happen. Congratulations, Leo. You're now the proud owner of a $40 million liability." The silence at the table was heavy, the kind of silence that usually precedes a massive storm. My father's glass stayed frozen halfway to his lips. Leo looked down at the gold-plated tablet he'd used to sign the transfer, his fingers suddenly trembling. "Debt?" Leo stammered, his voice cracking. "What do you mean, debt? This is a trust fund. It's supposed to be the Rose legacy." I leaned back, taking a slow sip of my water. I wanted them to realize that while they were busy playing favorites at country clubs, I was the one actually reading the fine print. "You see, Leo," I said, my voice dropping to a calm, clinical tone, "Grandmother's trust had a clause. If the capital was ever used to secure external loans for failing subsidiaries without a unanimous vote from the board, the liability would fall solely on the signatory who takes over the fund. Dad used that money to prop up his vanity projects for years. He thought he could just pass the trash to you, and because you're too lazy to do a background check, you'd just take the title and be happy." My father finally found his voice, though it sounded thin and aged. "Lily Rose, you're exaggerating. Those companies are going to turn around. It's just a temporary dip." "It's not a dip, Dad, it's a crater," I countered. "And here's the interesting part. I didn't just find the debt. I tracked where the money went. It didn't go to turnarounds. It went to offshore accounts that Mom has been using to fund her charity in the Caymans, which, as it turns out, is just a very expensive way to hide a gambling habit." My mother's face went from pale to a ghostly white. She reached for her pearl necklace, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. The perfect anniversary dinner was dissolving into a crime scene right before their eyes. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "You're our daughter." "I was the daughter who worked 80-hour weeks to keep your reputation intact," I replied. "But tonight, I'm just a shareholder who was bypassed. And as a shareholder, I'm legally obligated to report mismanagement." Leo grabbed my wrist, his eyes bulging. "You can't do this, Lily. If the bank sees those numbers, I'm ruined before I even start. I'll be bankrupt by morning." I looked down at his hand until he let go, disgusted. "You just didn't realize the chair was wired to an electric fence." I stood up, smoothing out my dress. The surrounding tables were starting to stare, sensing the friction radiating from our corner. My parents looked like two people who had just realized they were standing on a trapdoor. "I'm going to go now," I said, picking up my clutch. "I have a meeting with the forensic auditors at 8 a.m. Unless, of course, someone wants to explain why the one number I found, the secret account suffix 0042, is currently being used to pay for a villa in Italy that I definitely wasn't invited to." I turned on my heel, the click of my heels echoing against the marble floor. I didn't look back. I knew they were trapped. They had spent 25 years underestimating me, treating me like the stable one who would always catch them when they fell. But they forgot that the person who catches you also knows exactly how hard to drop you. I hadn't even reached my car before my phone started screaming in my bag. It was my father, then a text from my mother, then a frantic, misspelled string of curses from Leo. I ignored them all. I sat in the driver's seat, the neon lights of the restaurant reflecting off my windshield, and just breathed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the reliable daughter. I was the storm. I drove to a small, quiet apartment I'd kept in my own name, one they didn't even know existed. They thought I lived in the corporate housing they provided. They thought they owned my roof. They were wrong. The next morning, at exactly 7:15 a.m., there was a pounding at my door. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. I opened the door to find my father looking like he hadn't slept a second. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and the Patriarch of the Year mask had completely slipped. "Lily Rose, stop this madness," he pleaded, stepping into the room without an invitation. "I've talked to the lawyers. If those forensic audits go through, your mother and I could face a federal inquiry. Is that what you want? To see your parents in orange jumpsuits?" I walked over to my coffee maker, my back to him. "What I wanted, Dad, was the respect I earned. What I wanted was for you not to hand my life's work to a brother who can't even balance a checkbook because he's a man. You didn't care about my future at dinner. Why should I care about your freedom now?" "We can fix the trust," he said, his voice desperate. "I'll revoke the transfer to Leo. I'll make you the sole trustee. Just give me the access codes to the 0042 account. I need to move those funds before the bank's morning sweep." I turned around, leaning against the counter. "It's too late for a simple fix, Dad. And here's the thing about that number 42. It wasn't just an account suffix. It was a timestamp. At 4:20 a.m. this morning, the digital ledger automatically synced with the secondary auditors. I didn't even have to send the email. I just didn't stop it." He sank into my sofa, putting his head in his hands. "You've destroyed us." "No," I corrected him gently. "You destroyed yourselves. You just used my name to sign the checks. But I'm not done. I know about the Italian villa, Dad, and I know about the silent partner you've been consulting with, the one from the rival firm." His head snapped up, fear written in his eyes. "That's right," I continued. "I know you were planning to sell the Rose legacy to our biggest competitor behind my back. You weren't giving the trust to Leo because he's the heir. You were giving it to him because he's the only one stupid enough to sign the sale papers without reading the non-compete clauses. You were going to cash out and leave me with a bankrupt shell of a company. The door swung open again. It was Leo. He looked disheveled, clutching a stack of papers. "Lily, wait. I found something in the digital file. There's a secondary vault, a golden share. It says it belongs to you." I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd had in years. "That's the one number I was talking about at dinner, Leo. It's not just a debt. It's the one share that carries a veto power over any merger, sale, or transfer. While you were signing for the money, you didn't notice that the voting rights stayed with me." I walked over to them, looking down at the two men who had tried to erase my existence for their own gain. "Here is the deal," I said, my voice as cold as ice, "and it's the only one you're going to get." The room felt smaller as they stared at me. My father, the man who thought he could sell my soul to a competitor, looked smaller too. He was no longer the titan of industry. He was just a man caught in his own web. "The deal is simple," I said, pacing the room while they sat like scolded children. "Dad, you are going to announce your early retirement for health reasons. Effective immediately, you will transfer your remaining personal holdings into a restricted trust that I control. You'll get a monthly allowance, enough for a comfortable life, but not enough to fund another shell company or a secret villa." My father started to protest, but I held up a finger. "Don't. If you say a word, the auditors get the files on the Italian accounts. You have 5 minutes to decide if you want a quiet retirement or a loud trial." Then I turned to Leo. He was shaking, clutching those papers as if they could protect him from the reality of his own incompetence. "And you, Leo, you're going to sign a confession of gross negligence. You'll admit you attempted to take over the fund without due diligence. In exchange, I'll clear the $40 million liability from your name using the golden shares emergency reserves. You'll be broke, but you won't be in debt, and you won't be in prison." "Broke?" Leo gasped. "Lily, I'm your brother. I have a lifestyle to maintain." "Your lifestyle was built on my overtime," I snapped. "From now on, your lifestyle will be whatever you can earn with a resume that says you failed at being a trust fund baby. You're off the board, you're out of the office, and you're out of the family business." My mother walked in then, having followed them in her own car. She didn't look like the polished socialite from the anniversary dinner. Her eyes were red, and her expensive silk scarf was crooked. She looked at me, not with love, but with a newfound, terrifying respect. "And what about me?" she whispered. "You're going to close the charity accounts in the Caymans," I said. "Every cent that's left goes back into the employee pension fund that Dad borrowed from. If you do that, I'll tell the board it was an accounting error. If you don't, well, I think the tax authorities would love to have a chat about your Italian real estate." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of my coffee maker. They looked at each other, searching for a loophole, a way out, a secret door. But I had spent years building the walls. I knew every brick, I knew every crack. "I need the papers signed by noon," I said, checking my watch. "I have a press conference at 1 p.m. to announce the new direction of Rose Industries. And trust me, the one number the public is going to see is the record-breaking profit we're going to make once the dead weight is gone." I walked to the door and held it open. "The anniversary dinner is over," I said firmly. "Now please leave. I have a company to run." As they shuffled out, defeated and silenced, I realized that the one number wasn't just about money or shares. It was the number of people I could truly trust in this world, and that number was one: myself. The press conference was a blur of flashing lights and aggressive questions. I stood at the podium, the Rose Industries logo gleaming behind me. For the first time in 30 years, the person standing there wasn't a man in a tailored suit, hiding a crumbling ego. It was me. "Today marks a new era," I told the cameras, my voice steady and cold. "We are restructuring. We are liquidating all non-performing assets, including certain overseas properties, and reinvesting that capital back into the people who actually do the work." The news hit the markets like a lightning bolt. By the time the closing bell rang, the stock price hadn't just stabilized, it had surged. The one number the analysts kept talking about was the 15% growth projected under my new leadership. But the real victory happened an hour later, in the quiet of my new office, the office that used to belong to my father. I was sitting at the mahogany desk when the door opened. It was Leo. He didn't have his smirk. He didn't even have his expensive watch. I'd made him sell it to cover his personal debts. "I'm leaving, Lily," he said, his voice flat. "I took a job in sales, real estate, in another city." "Good," I said without looking up from my monitor. "It'll build character." "Do you hate us that much?" he asked, his hand on the doorframe. I finally looked up. "I don't hate you, Leo. Hate requires energy. I'm just indifferent. You were all so busy looking at the Lily Rose you created in your heads, the quiet one, the helper, that you never bothered to look at the woman actually running the show. You didn't lose the trust fund because I was mean. You lost it because you were blind." He lingered for a second, perhaps hoping for a hug or a good luck, but I had already turned back to my screen. The door clicked shut, and for the first time the air in the room felt clean. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city lights. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a private investigator I'd hired months ago. The Italian villa had been sold. The funds were already hitting the employee pension account. My parents were now living in a modest condo in the suburbs, away from the prying eyes of the high society friends they had lied to for decades. They had their partnership, just like they wanted. It just didn't include a private jet or a daughter they could manipulate. I picked up a glass of wine and raised it to the skyline. "To 30 years," I whispered to the empty air. "And to the first day of the rest of my life." They thought they could give away my trust. They thought they could hand over my future like a piece of cake at a party. But they forgot that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one making the loudest toast. It's the one who knows exactly where the bodies are buried and who owns the shovel. I hope you enjoyed this journey of Lily Rose's ultimate comeback. Where are you all watching this video from, and at what time? Let me know in the comments below. If your family betrayed your life's work for a favorite sibling, would you walk away quietly or burn the bridge to light your way forward? For more tales of cold revenge and hidden truths, subscribe to LilyCalmStories. Don't let the quiet fool you.